All right, so we're going to review types of transport. Remember, there are two overall types of transport, passive and active. All types of transport refer to the movement of molecules across a cell membrane. So in my diagram, which is showing facilitated diffusion, a type of passive transport, I see that my phospholipid bilayer, which is my cell membrane, is noted here. The cell membrane separates the cell from its environment. So facilitated diffusion, I know molecules travel from a high concentration to a low concentration. I can tell that this area is high concentration because it has a lot of molecules. It is traveling to a low concentration. I can tell it's low because there's only one molecule. And it's facilitated diffusion because the molecules are traveling down the concentration gradient through a transport protein. I have 3 transport proteins embedded or integrated into my cell membrane. So let's start going through these questions. For number 1, which of the following is an example of passive transport? Well, passive transport I know requires no energy and goes from high to low concentration. So I'm going to go through my answer choices. Diffusion, I know moves high to low. So most likely that will be my answer, but I'm going to check my other ones. Endocytosis, molecules enter, and this is a type of active transport. Exocytosis, molecules exit, and that's also a part of active transport. And then the sodium potassium ATPase pump, anything to do with pump requires energy. This is going to be active as well. So I know B, D, and C are types of active transport. That is not what I'm looking for. So A is my answer. What is secreted? Secreted means released from cells during exocytosis. Well, I know that exocytosis releases very large molecules that can't fit through the cell membrane on their own. They can't just pass through the pores, and they may not even fit through the cell through transport proteins because they're just too big. So I know that small molecules is not going to be it. Negative ions are also really small, and water I know passes through, that's part of osmosis. So my answer is large molecules. Number 3, the process of the cell membrane pumping. Pumping means force liquid in a direction. And I know that this requires energy. The active pumping requires energy, just like when you're filling a bike tire with air. You pumping the air into the bike takes a lot of energy from you. Well, it's the same in a cell membrane. All right, so pumping extra molecules out of a cell into an environment where there is a lower concentration of molecules. Don't get tripped up by this lower concentration. Always remember that pumping refers to a process that takes energy. So my answer choice needs to be a process that also takes energy. Diffusion, I know, moves particles high to low, but this is a part of passive transport. That's not my answer. Osmosis is when water moves high to low. This does not require energy. That is not my answer. Active transport, yes, does require energy. So this is most likely my answer, and passive I know does not require any energy. So that is not my answer. All right. Transport proteins. I know move molecules. Okay, it even tells me transport proteins moving molecules across the plasma or cell membrane. It's part of. I already know that a transport protein is part of facilitated diffusion. So I'm simply going to see if this matches. So facilitated diffusion, this does not match osmosis. All right, diffusion, that is not a match. Endocytosis, no match. Facilitated diffusion, yes, this is a match. So remember, osmosis and diffusion, yes, they are going high to low, but they don't require a protein for that process. Therefore, they are not the answers. And then endocytosis is just a part of active transport that requires energy. So that's not a match. All right, which of these describes constant particle movement with no overall change in concentration? No overall change in concentration simply means that we have reached a balance. So I am looking for an answer choice that matches the word balance. Passive transport simply means no energy. That's not a match. Dynamic equilibrium. Well, the annotation that we've come up with for equilibrium means balance, so this is most likely my answer. This matches. Osmosis doesn't always mean balance because water is traveling from high to low. And facilitated diffusion, same thing, this is not a match because the concentrations don't necessarily need to be the same. Therefore, B is my answer. All right, which of the following is not true of exocytosis? So exocytosis, I know, means that we're exiting large molecules, and it does require energy because it's part of active transport. All right. So, results in large particle secretion. This is true. So I'm looking for something that is not. Does not require any energy put in. Well, that's false. It does require energy, so this is most likely my answer. Expels. Expels means release. Release waste material. Well, yes, this is true. And takes place in the plasma membrane. Well, if it's a part of transport, and exocytosis is a part of active transport, then yes, it takes place in the plasma membrane. So A, C, and D are true. I'm looking for the one that is not true, and that is B. Yep. All right, what moves necessary molecules or waste through the cell membrane? My keyword is moves. Moves is simply a code word for transport. Those are synonyms. So I'm looking for the molecule that transports. Well, transport proteins has it in its name. That would be a match. Phospholipids just make up the cell membrane. They don't transport anything. Carbohydrates identify chemical signals. That's not a match. And water molecules don't transport other molecules, so it's not a match. My answer is A. In diffusion, which means that you're moving particles high to low, and it tells me it's a type of passive transport which requires no energy. Molecules move from an area of, well, I just wrote it, move from high concentration to an area of low concentration, so high to low. That is A. The rest don't match. All right, number 9, diffusion, move high to low. Remember, diffusion is for any type of particle, and osmosis is specifically for water. It says they're both vital, which just means important, to the cell transporting, which just means moving molecules across the cell membrane. Diffusion and osmosis are both types of, well, I know both of them move high to low. The type of transport that goes high to low is passive. So I'm going to look for what matches passive transport. So carbohydrate synthesis just means make process, that does not match. Cellular replication just means copy, that does not match. Active transport, that requires energy and goes from low to high, that is not a match. And passive transport, well, yes, this does match. So that's my answer. Number 10, under her microscope, Monica observes carrier molecules transporting molecules. So carrier molecules, I know, they're just a transport protein. And it even tells me it transports molecules in the cell membrane. These proteins do not use energy, so automatically I'm thinking this is a type of passive transport to transport the molecules. All right, which of the following best explains the type of cell transport observed by the scientists? So I'm looking for something that has to do with passive transport, and specifically the type of passive transport that requires a transport protein, which means that I'm looking for facilitated diffusion. All right, active transport because carrier molecules were used. Well, no, that doesn't match. And carrier molecules are not used in active transport. Diffusion because the molecules were traveling against the concentration gradient. Well, one, no, this is false. If in diffusion, molecules travel down the concentration gradient, not against. Facilitated diffusion because the carrier molecules or transport proteins were not using energy. Yes, this matches. It talks about facilitated diffusion. It says that the carrier molecules or transport proteins do not use energy, and in my paragraph it says do not use energy, so this matches. Osmosis because water was entering the cell. Osmosis is not facilitated diffusion. That does not match. C is my answer. Number 11. The cell membrane contains channels and pumps. Remember, pumps, think forcing liquid. And this requires energy that help move materials from one side to the other. What are these channels and pumps made of? Well, if it's talking about moving, I know that's transport. The thing that's involved in transporting is a protein. So proteins transport. Proteins also pump. So I'm looking for protein. So carbs, it's not a match. Lipids, it's not a match. Bilipids is not even a thing. And I'm left with proteins, which does match. Flip, we're almost done. Thanks for hanging in there. Number 12, which of the following best explains the process depicted in the above diagram? Well, I see I have my phospholipid bilayer, which is my cell membrane. Okay, I see these are transport proteins. I see my arrows are going from a high concentration to a low concentration because I have a lot of molecules up here, not a lot of molecules. So if molecules are diffusing from high to low concentration, I know for sure that this is passive transport. If they are traveling from high to low through a transport protein, I know that this is facilitated diffusion. So I'm going to look for this. So water molecules diffusing through a selectively permeable membrane. I don't know that this is water. Movement of molecules down a concentration gradient, expending energy. This is contradictory. Expending means releasing. If molecules are moving down a gradient, they don't use any energy. The transport of molecules across a membrane down. Yes, they're moving down. Down is high to low. A concentration gradient by a protein. Yes, I have transport proteins. This matches. Movement of suspended. This just means floating particles. Through a porous. Porous means just has openings. Well, these aren't necessarily floating or suspended particles, and this isn't specific to what this is showing. I need to have something that's talking about a protein, so this does not match. So C is my answer. Whew, last one, guys, so close. All right, when the concentration of molecules on both sides of a membrane is the same, anytime I see same, I'm going to think isotonic. The molecules will. So isotonic, remember my annotation was I have a cell and water is moving out and in at the same rate. So A, move across the membrane to the outside of the cell. So that shows me I have water leaving. So that's going to result in the cell shrinking. So that would not work. They stop moving altogether. Well, no, that's not what happens. Move across the membrane in both directions. So if I look back at my annotation, I have water leaving and coming in the cell. That's 2 arrows, 2 directions. So yes, that matches. And move across the membrane to the inside of the cell. Well, if it was moving in, the cell would swell, and it's only moving in one direction. So that's not it. My answer is C. If you want extra credit, please tell me what is happening in this meme biologically and message me in a complete sentence on Edmodo by Monday, November 5th at 8 p.m. All right, that's it. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for hanging in there.